Hello everyone, hope you're all well and thanks very much for all the support with my videos. I'm very grateful. Today I want to speak about the big news that broke that Joe Biden, US President, will not be seeking re-election in November. Now this is probably the worst kept secret in current affairs because we've seen serious issues being presented to the vast majority of people over the last number of weeks in terms of his mental incapacity and cognitive abilities as well, and it has demonstrated the pressure has come on from above about pushing Biden to the side, from his donors, from his friends in Hollywood, from the Democratic Party, from the deep state. I'm sure the Obamas and the Clintons have their fingers in this pie as well. So in the context of this, we've seen Biden stepping aside, but he's going to continue as US President, which is quite fascinating considering he's not able to be re-elected, but again at the same time he's willing to stand as the leader of the so-called free world. Now this is in fascinating times in terms of what's happening internationally and domestically here in Ireland, and I'll show you how the implications are impacting us here in Ireland, because Simon Harris, who has not got the nomination by Joe Biden to take his place. It's his American cousin, Kamala Harris. Quite a similar personality, clueless, thrown into the deep end. And now we have Simon Harris eulogising over Joe Biden in the last 24 hours. He made a long-winded statement. Complete nonsense, complete spin, complete propaganda, but we'll go through it and you can make up your own mind. Initially he said thanks for the global leadership. So Joe Biden has brought us on the brink of World War III, globalization policies of his multinationals profiting massively around the world, pushing their unipolar world. He also spoke about the friendship with Joe Biden, and the friendship of course comes from the side of big business, multinationals who come to Ireland, pay next to no tax and use all the regime that's in place because of successive governments' policies to benefit the super rich and the big corporations. And the friendship also continues with the use of Shannon Airport as a de facto military airbase for over 20 years. Many flights in the war to the illegal invasion of Iraq were through Shannon Airport, and many more flights I'm sure on the way to Israel are flying through Iraq today, or sorry, Shannon today. But the interesting thing also around this is that he said the world has changed since 2020, the COVID pandemic. Well, it has, in terms of the lockdowns, where the biggest transfer of wealth towards the billionaires in society, small businesses were smashed, ordinary people rights were absolutely demolished. We saw discrimination being legislated for. We've seen other attack on basic human and civil rights. Not to mention 500 million people globally have been forced into poverty. He also commented on the war in Europe. Well, isn't that fascinating? So he didn't mention NATO's proxy war. Of course, Harris wouldn't, because he's a fully signed up member to the warmongers in the European Union following the re-election of Ursula von der Leyen in the European Commission, who's pushing this war agenda also as well. Didn't speak about the Minsk agreements back in 2014, didn't speak about the genocide in the Donbass, over 14,000 killed, ethnic Russians killed. Didn't speak about Boris Johnson flying to Kiev in 2022 to call off the Istanbul peace agreements. Of course that won't be mentioned because that doesn't fit the narrative. And he also said Biden was a voice for reason. Voice for reason when you consider his warmongering and incoherence and cognitive or lack of abilities. And he also spoke about effective multilateralism, which means that he's been pushing more war. He hasn't been working towards diplomacy or peace, pushing their own imperial agendas. And he also spoke to the shared solutions. Now, the shared solutions are basically the US dictating policy to the European Union, filters down to Ireland, in terms of what to do with our economic policies and what to do with our neutrality, as I've said, as a drive towards more war. Recently, the Irish government have sent off up to 30 to 40 vehicles to Ukraine in so-called non-lethal military aid. Now, in any war, anything that's sent across is lethal aid because it's involved in a war, in essence. So this is what Ireland are using. They're using the European Peace Facility. We're using different mechanisms to send off more weapons to war rather than standing up on the interests for peace. And he also spoke about the fight for democracy and freedom in Ukraine. As long as it takes, as long as it's necessary, that's a normal spin that comes out through this narrative and the impacts it has in Ireland, not to mention the fallout of immigration. We've seen well over 100,000 from Ukraine coming to Ireland. We've seen the immigration industry go out of control, profit massively, while ordinary people are struggling. We see that with the protests currently that's taking place on a daily basis in Coolock. So it's interesting we talk about shared solutions. It's about bowing down and them telling us what to do and us bowing down to their own interests. So he also spoke about the ceasefire in Gaza, working towards ceasefire in Gaza. Didn't speak about the lobbyists behind Biden, and he could pull the plug. But of course, he didn't. He wouldn't, because of the money and the power brokers in Washington, D.C. And he said he was a passionate worker for peace on Irish soil. But he's dragged us towards war and NATO. We won't mention the Nord Stream. We won't mention the Minsk Accords, as I just said. We won't mention the expansionism of NATO. We won't mention any of that stuff because that's not relevant to what Simon Harris's spin and his nonsense coming out as well. So it is interesting times we're in, and it is develops really into what the Irish leaders really stand for. The political classes and establishments in Ireland represent the interests of the warmongers, war criminals, and I'm sure he will be eulogised and feted by the Irish mainstream media, which he is currently. And when you see those responses from an Irish Taoiseach, you know what side they're on. Rather than being on the side for peace, the side for diplomacy, the side for anti-war, the side for ordinary working class people, the side for fair and just economic policies that puts the needs of people first rather than the big multinationals and the vultures and their tax loopholes that neoliberalism creates. That's what we should be working towards here in Ireland. So thanks for all the support on my videos, really appreciate it. Thanks for likes, shares, comments. Thanks everybody who supports me through buying me a coffee, and also thanks for everybody who presses subscribe to my YouTube channel. So thanks a lot for all the support, and take care. Talk to you all soon. Slán. Bye bye.